All right. If you are in customer success right now and you feel like expectations have completely changed overnight in the B2B SaaS area, I'm just going to let you know that you are not alone and you are not imagining it. Because customer success has officially been promoted, if that's what you want to call it, but nobody actually updated the job description. And now you are expected to own revenue, to forecast renewals, to drive expansion, to influence pipeline. And yet, no one actually taught you how to do any or all of that. So, if you've ever sat in a renewal conversation and thought, wait, am I supposed to be selling right now? Or you've been asked to forecast growth and you're thinking, I don't even know what signals to look for, then guess what? This episode is for you. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Anika Zubair, and welcome to the Customer Success Pro podcast, your go-to space for real talk, expert advice, and actionable insights in the world of customer success. I'm a CS executive leader, award-winning strategist, CS coach, and customer success fanatic. I help CSMs and CS leaders build the skills and the confidence to become revenue-driving pros and scale world-class CS teams. So whether you're brand new to CS or a seasoned leader, this podcast is here to support your growth. Because customer success isn't a destination, it's a journey. And I'm here to be your guide and navigate every step of your journey. So join me every Wednesday where you'll get fresh CS tips, tricks, and strategies you can actually use. Some weeks I'll share my own insights and best practices from working in CS over the last 13 years. And once a month, I'll bring on expert guests to dive into the most relevant and pressing topics in customer success today. So if you're ready to level up, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in, and let's make your CS journey a little bit easier together. Now, I just want to share that I have always been in revenue roles. And what I mean by that, for those of you that have been listening to this podcast for quite some time, is I started my career in B2B SaaS in sales. I was a SDR and then I moved into an account management role. So I have a lot of sales skills. And so when I transitioned into becoming a customer success manager and then eventually into a customer success team lead, head of, director, VP of customer success, when I made those transitions, first of all, my very first head of customer success role, I worked for a VP of sales. And since then, over the 15 years of working in customer success, I have worked for a number of different organizations, number of different industries, and I've worked for different leaders. So anywhere from reporting to the chief operating officer, to reporting to the chief commercial officer, to reporting to the chief customer officer. There have been a number of different ways my role has sat. I've even sat reporting directly to the CEO as well. But regardless of the role, regardless of the company, and regardless of the size, my role as the leader in customer success or the most senior person in customer success at the company meant that I actually always had a revenue target. And that revenue target was broken down in two ways. That was either in net revenue retention, so not only minimizing churn, but also making sure that growth was happening within customer accounts, or it was in gross revenue retention, which was managing and mitigating churn. So my role of my entire 15 years in working in customer success has always been a revenue role, meaning that my job has always been to protect and grow revenue. And I know that every customer success manager that's ever worked in my team, or everyone, even I've run post-sales teams that include onboarding, implementation, professional services, support, every type of team that I have run globally around the world have always held revenue targets. Now, I have had teams where it's been much more aggressive, where we've had like a spreadsheet breakdown of what their quarterly and annual quotas were. But I've also had teams where it was a lighter touch, where we were all group as in a team working towards a revenue target as well. But I say all of this, and I give you all of this context in regards to revenue in customer success and my experience, because I have always believed that customer success has been a revenue department. But because of what's happening in SaaS today, right now, as of April 2026, and because of the market shift, because of the global economics, because of the wars that are breaking out everywhere, all of this is affecting our bubble and ecosystem of software as a service or B2B SaaS. And it is really putting a lot of pressure on company investors as well as company C-suite leaders to make sure that they are watching every dollar spent and also making sure that they are gaining as many dollars as well, whether that's through customer acquisition, through customer renewals, you name it. They are trying to be very mindful of where spend is. So because of that, customer success has gotten a promotion. And I say that because there are a lot of customer success leaders, a lot of customer success professionals that I work with every single day that come to me saying, I've never carried a revenue quota, or I've never actually forecasted, or I've never done a renewal playbook. And that's okay, because in traditional ways of customer success, or in, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago of customer success, it was normal for people to move from something like support into customer success. It's been very normal, especially during the pandemic, for people to move from teaching or medical industry or from other non-tech industries into customer success within B2B SaaS as well. And I'll also say that it's normal for a lot of people who were in customer service to suddenly move into customer success as well. So all of that being said, I just want us to zoom out for a second, because across SaaS right now, companies are really, really doubling down on efficiency. And growth is really, really becoming so much harder than anyone has ever imagined. Truly, if you have been in SaaS or technology for the last decade at least, if not 2 decades, it is truly a pivotal moment in SaaS and technology right now. As I said, growth is harder, but we really had a tough time. If you remember back in 2020, okay, when we went into pandemic lockdown and everyone was working from home, we were all stuck working from home, or worse, teams were being furloughed, meaning there was no longer a need for that role back then. Then fast forward into 2022 and 2023, it was like layoff season happened everywhere and anywhere. Teams were being cut left, right, and center. Redundancies were becoming a norm. And every single year, companies started to cut because budgets got tighter. And then now let's fast forward into 2025 and into 2026. And suddenly, AI is threatening everyone's job. And because of all of these subsequent events that have happened in technology and in SaaS, growth is just so tough. And budgets are just extremely tight. And all of a sudden, the easiest way to really drive revenue within a company is actually not in new logo acquisition. Now, I have known this for a long time, and if you've been a long-time listener of this podcast, you probably know too that driving revenue from your new logo acquisition is okay if you're a small startup of 1 to 5, maybe 10 people, because that is where all your money is coming from. You are trying to acquire as many customers as possible. But once you hit a minimum viable amount of customers, now it very much depends on what size organization you are, but once you end up hitting that, new logo acquisition is no longer going to serve you as well as it did when you were first starting off in your company. Because we all know companies or customers that actually invest in our product and are using our product and actually see value in our product, they are going to stick around for years to come, which creates the metric customer lifetime value. But what's really important to call out is that these customers are quote unquote easier to sell and grow to because they're already using your product and service, which makes all the difference. Quick pause, because if you're listening to this episode, you are probably thinking, I need to get better at proving value before a renewal. And let me tell you, you are not alone. Most customer success professionals wait way too long. They end up focusing on activity and not impact. And by the time a renewal hits, it's already way too late. So now imagine going into every renewal with clear, measurable outcomes already documented. No scrambling, no discounting, and no last-minute panic that sets in. This is exactly what we are covering in my free Rev Up Masterclass happening on Wednesday, April 29th at 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, I only host a few free masterclasses per year. And this is going to be the only one that I'm going to be running until September. So if you want to hit your renewal goals and hit your churn reduction targets this year, you don't want to miss this free masterclass happening on Wednesday, April 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Plus, for the first time ever, I am giving VIP access to the first-time signups. So it's a live Q&A and a mini workshop after the 1-hour masterclass. So this is going to be something that is only for the VIPs. And if you want to sign up today for the free masterclass, all you have to do is head over to thecustomersuccesspro.com/masterclass. I hope to see you on April 29th. Go ahead and head over to thecustomersuccesspro.com/masterclass. All right, let's go back to the episode. Now, as I was saying, new account logos or new customer acquisition, super important, never going to go anywhere because we're always going to have salespeople and sales roles. But like I said, the shift that's happened in the last 5 to 6 years, it's really causing business owners and investors to really start realizing that customer growth is not in new logo acquisition, but growth in your business is actually coming down to your existing customer, which means customer success is no longer a support function. Now, if you've come from support or you've come from customer service, do not worry. It is possible to make the shift, but I just want to let you know that CS, customer success, is no longer support. It will no longer ever be seen like support because we have AI. Customer success is now a revenue function, and within a lot of businesses, by the way, it is the biggest revenue function there is. So if I just call out some really big logos like HubSpot, like Monday.com, like Salesforce, all of these companies, by the way, their biggest revenue driver is from their existing customer base. Now, I know I'm saying this to listeners that are probably working in customer success and know this, but the reason I'm saying it so clearly to you today is to remind you that you are a revenue leader. Your role, whether you're a leader or an individual contributor, you are part of the biggest revenue function within your organization. And I am seeing this across the board. Like I said, small startups of 10, 20, 50 people, all the way to major enterprise businesses that are running billions of dollars in annual recurring revenue, okay? Customer success teams now own renewals, and some teams are owning upsells and growth as well. But you know what they're also being asked? They are being asked to forecast expansion. Now, whether you directly close upsell deals or pass it on to your AE, customer success is now being asked to forecast, hey, what does renewal look like a year from now? Or what does customer growth look like a year from now? And all of that is a forecast ask. And they are being measured, by the way, these teams, they are being measured on NRR. It is a North Star metric, so it's not just retention. It is about customer growth as well. So NRR is a very, very North Star metric within SaaS organizations. And if you are a venture-backed or investment-backed company, I'm guessing your investors or your C-suite, they are probably very, very much interested in net revenue retention or NRR, which basically means they want to see not only that your customer base continues to renew with your product, they want to make sure that you grow that customer base. So let's say you have one customer and they pay you $100 every year. In year 2, your investors and company is hoping that that company is going to spend $120 or maybe $150 per year with you. Or in year 3, they're hoping that they maybe even double their cost up to $300, right? Whatever the price point is, they are trying to grow that account. And that is what NRR is. But the problem that keeps happening is all of these expectations, they have changed. And that's what I was saying at the very top of this podcast episode is suddenly a lot of teams who have never owned a revenue number, never had a quota, or never actually practiced revenue skills like forecasting, like objection handling, like renewal conversations, it feels really uncomfortable and it's really hard. These conversations are tough. And if you are listening and you are like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable in a renewal conversation, it's because there is an act of selling in a renewal conversation, or even in identifying upsells and making sure you have a pipeline of growth within your customer base. That's a white space analysis skill. And all of that training, by the way, that training just didn't happen, unfortunately. Customer success teams in global organizations or small startups, they are all running at a mile a minute. I work with teams around the world, and all of them are running from customer call to training call to onboarding meeting to product review and product release calls to meetings with their manager. There is literally never a moment to breathe in customer success. And I know you're starting to feel that. And I know if you're listening, you've probably felt it too. And I have too. But the thing I'm trying to point out here is we are suddenly having to forecast renewals, forecast upsells, really be a revenue generating engine and really being a revenue focused team. But the training didn't happen. And I was lucky enough in my career to work for sales leaders. Those were my first leaders that I worked for. So everything that they did in sales while I was building a customer success organization, I took parts and pieces of that and applied it within customer success. And when you don't actually have the training or you don't work along sales leaders or you are now suddenly, let's say it's 2026 and you're being pressured left, right, and center to close out the second half of the year in a positive net revenue retention mark, you end up having a lot of pressure on you, and that's just not healthy. So what ends up happening? You end up in this weird in between, is what I like to say. And what ends up happening, what I end up seeing happen right now within organizations is we end up operating like an account manager, but being measured like a salesperson. So you're running your check-in calls, you're reporting on usage, you are reacting 60 or 90 days before the renewal. But at the same time of you doing all of those activities that everything in customer success that we've known and we've kept doing, your leadership team ends up asking you, hey, where is this growth coming from? And what does your expansion pipeline look like? And how confident are you in this forecast that you've built out? And there's this huge disconnect that's happening right now. And it's really unfortunate, but it is because no one actually taught you how to think commercially and how to execute a revenue plan within customer success. And I really hate saying that. And it's such a struggle because I know customer success professionals are the hardest working people, hands down, honestly, like truly the hardest working people in SaaS at least. And with that huge disconnect growing right now between what your leadership wants you to be doing and what your board is asking you to do versus what your team is actually doing every single day, it's causing a huge problem. And then by the end of the year, what ends up happening is you're like, oh my gosh, I realized that there's this big disconnect and it's caused so many mistakes within my team. And some of the biggest mistakes that I end up seeing within customer success professionals is that they believe that strong relationships will naturally lead to revenue. They believe that building rapport, that getting on multiple calls with a customer, that being able to be likable is going to guarantee the renewal and guarantee revenue. The first thing I'm going to say is a renewal is a sale, by the way. And I hope that that's not causing you to have a heart attack at this moment, because a lot of people say, oh, I work in customer success because I don't want to work in sales. That's right. You do not work in sales. I 100% back that statement up. But you do work in a revenue role. And if you want to be a revenue leader and you want to continue to work as a revenue-focused customer success professional, you need to realize that relationships and rapport is only step one to revenue. But hoping and praying and waiting that a strong relationship with your customer will naturally lead to revenue, I'm sorry. That's just, I'm sorry to break your heart, but that is just going to cause you a world of pain. And it's just not going to be nice for your renewal targets. And ultimately, it's going to really hurt your ego and your ability to be a great customer success professional because we take it so personally. We think that building strong relationships is going to naturally lead to a renewal. And then when it doesn't happen, we feel so heartbroken. And honestly, this is one of the biggest myths in customer success. And I know you can have the best relationships in the world and still end up losing the renewal. I have personally been through that. I have done podcast episodes all around that too. And I have had some of the best customers that have believed in me, that have trusted me, that have gotten on every call with me. And still, those customers missed expansion. And that is because relationships do not drive revenue. To be clear, relationships are the very first step towards revenue. But if you aren't actively having commercial conversations, then the revenue is never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And the only way that revenue ends up happening is if you actually deliver on outcomes. And then you showcase how those outcomes lead to upsells or renewals. And before I jump into like my tips and tactics in this podcast, I just want to call out a few other mistakes that I keep seeing amongst customer success professionals. And one of the other things that I see in all of the workshops I run and all of the trainings that I run is I see a lot of customer success professionals staying in what I call the helpful mode. And I know we are helpful people. We are empathetic people. We want to answer our customers' questions. We want to solve their tickets. We want to run through features with them, right? And we end up thinking that all of that work that we're doing every single day with our customers, that ends up equaling some level of value. And to some degree, it might. But the problem is, and I said this earlier on, is AI is going to come for that job. In a few years' time, all of those explaining of features, all of that stuff around like, oh, I want to be able to be helpful and answer questions and debug things. AI will be doing that. It's already doing it. A lot of mature organizations are already doing that. So if you think that doing work like that, or busy work, as I like to call it, is equaling to value, it really doesn't, okay? I'm not telling you to be rude to your customers, because please don't do that, because we want to be helpful and we want to be kind and we want to be empathetic and understanding to our customers. But being helpful, overly helpful, I should say, is just keeping you busy. It doesn't actually position you as someone who drives business impact, all right? And one other mistake that I really want to call out here is I see this happen so often, and I did it early in my career as well, and I've seen some of the CSMs that have worked for me do this as well, is they end up treating a renewal and an expansion as events in the calendar or events in the customer lifecycle. Now, they are events, by the way. I would like to point out that expansion happens for most SaaS companies once a year, right? Or twice a year, maybe. And renewal definitely has a date on it. There's always a renewal date, right? And yes, there are dates in the calendar where things are going to happen, but the way we work with renewals, the way we talk about expansions, the way we actually position a renewal and expansion to our customer, they are not events, okay? I've seen so many customer success managers wait for 60, 90, 100 days, any sort of number, insert number here. They wait a certain amount of days before a renewal date to start talking about value. And usually that happens on a QBR about 90 or 120 days before renewal, right? That is that moment that they decide to start actually talking about the outcomes achieved, about the value delivered, or even worse, by the way, they wait for a customer to bring up expansion or value or outcomes. And honestly, by that point, you are so late. You might as well just call that customer churned. And I hate to be a little bit of a mean or direct person in these conversations that we have on this podcast, but revenue is really not built at renewal. It's built on your first kickoff call. It's built at the first time your customer logs in. It's built at the moments in between the calls when there's less friction and then they're seeing value and that they're actually using your product and then able to articulate it as well back to their C-suite. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is value is built in every single conversation leading up to that QBR, leading up to that renewal conversation. And I hope that as you listen through this podcast, you're starting to realize if you are doing any of these things, which again, totally normal to be doing these things, because like I said, suddenly your role has changed. It's gotten an upgrade and your leadership team is expecting something totally different from you than they were 2, 3, or 5 years ago. And it's a wake-up call. I really hope you're treating this podcast episode like a little bit of a wake-up call and realizing that the activities you are doing and the way you are working with your customers is probably not actually generating you revenue. It's generating you likes, it's generating some product engagement, but is it actually generating customer revenue? That's what I hope you are thinking about as you listen to this episode. So, if customer success is now a revenue function, if we're now revenue generating, if now you're realizing, okay, I need to have quotas and targets for my teams, I need to be focused on NRR and GRR, I need to be focused on how we grow customers and predict renewals and forecast upsells, well, what do we actually need to be doing differently? Because there's quite a few things that we need to do differently. And there are 3 skills that I think every customer success manager really needs to master, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader. Okay, the first skill, and I've talked about this so much in my newsletter or in LinkedIn as well, is the ability to have commercial discovery. Like, this is not onboarding questions. This is not how are things going. This is understanding, how does this customer make money? Like, how does my customer's company make money? And also, where are they losing money? And what are their top business priorities this quarter? If you don't understand their business, you cannot drive revenue. Because here's the thing, we have been told to understand our product and fit our product into their customer's business. But like I said, thanks to the economy and thanks to AI, companies can easily switch from one tool to the next. At the time of recording this podcast, there's a huge exodus happening right now of people leaving ChatGPT to go to Claude because of Claude Code and Claude Cowork, right? Companies cannot bet on customers being loyal and being fit into their revenue stream. It's just not going to work that way because there are too many tools out there. There's too many softwares out there. And thanks to AI, there's software being made every single week. And because of that, customers have the ultimate choice. So if you have always been thinking, okay, in customer success, I need to really understand the product and then fit it into my customer's business, wrong. Moving forward, you need to understand your customer's business, and then you need to fit in how your product helps them make some money, save some money. That's as simple as that, right? If you cannot drive some sort of revenue growth within your customer's company, your product is not essential. And it's likely on the list of software that a CFO is going to cut next year. All right, the second skill that I really want to cover is value articulation. Now, you need to be able to clearly connect what your product does to how it impacts revenue, efficiency, or risk within your customer's company. Not features, by the way, not features. No features, okay? I don't want you to think about the features, and I don't want you to think about usage either. Again, these are things that we were told to focus on before, but now your leadership team is expecting something different. So please do not focus on features or usage. What you need to be focusing on is impact. You should be able to say, this is how your investment is driving X result for your business, right? You've invested some money, customer, in our product and service, and this is the result it's giving for your business. If you can't say that to your customers with clear conviction, I'm sorry, the renewal is going to be a hard conversation. Like, you won't be able to actually defend a renewal if you can't have that conversation or that statement with your customer. And if you can't justify an expansion and you can't actually show the X dollars or the percentage value that your product is bringing to your customer's business, again, you're still going to be sitting in a support role instead of a revenue role. And the third skill that I would love for everyone listening to this podcast to start to master, or at least start thinking on, is an expansion strategy, okay? Expansion is not about selling more, okay? It's not about being salesy. It's not about closing and pitching and doing a hard pivot and just selling all our products and services. If that's what you're doing, by the way, then oh my gosh, please stop, because nobody wants to be sold to. Everybody wants to be consulted. People want to understand the problem you're having and then guide you with helpful solutions. But I hope you understand that expansion is not about selling more, it's about solving more problems. So, what are the gaps in adoption? Where are there new teams or use cases in the business? Where is there unrealized value with your customer? And then once you understand that, it's building a clear path to help your customer go after that. Now, this is how you end up creating predictable growth. And when you master these three skills, everything ends up changing. You stop reacting and you start actually leading. And I always remember a story early in my career whenever I start talking about this topic, because early in my career, honestly, as you do when you're younger, you really thought that you were right with everything. And I really thought I was doing everything right. My customers liked me, my calls were super smooth, I was always responsive. And then I lost my first renewal and I was heartbroken. I was shocked because I thought, hey, they liked me. I did everything they asked. I responded to every email. I got on every call with them. And that moment really clicked for me. It's something that I still remember to this day. And it made me realize later on in my career that I was managing relationships. I was not driving outcomes. And from that point onwards, I started to completely change how I approach my accounts, how I worked with my different clients. And every conversation became about business impact at their company. And every meeting had a clear outcome, and every account had a growth plan, or for those that call it a success plan, essentially, a plan to grow with my product and service based on their goals, not based on what everyone's saying, oh, just sell more, grow more, et cetera. No, 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 no. I understood their business. I asked them strategic discovery questions to figure out what makes their business money and what loses their business money. And then I inserted my product into that business plan. And I showed them that with our product, there was a growth plan. And that is when I started to drive real revenue within my accounts. And that's when I was able to hit 200% of my upsell targets. And honestly, it felt great. But I did have to make that shift. All right, we are coming to the point of the podcast where I give you a weekly challenge. Now, before I dive into the challenge this week, I just want to call out that if you are currently walking while listening to this podcast, or driving while listening to this podcast, or maybe at the gym, or just cleaning the house while listening to this podcast, I love that you are listening. But my weekly challenges are always tactical and practical, and they're meant for you to go and do something. So if you want to have the weekly challenge in a written format where you can take it away and either print it out or copy and paste it into your own notes and actually be able to take the challenge and apply it in your role, I share a weekly challenge in my newsletter that I drop every single Wednesday. So if you are not already on my newsletter, go check it out. It's newsletter.thecustomersuccesspro.com. And every week I summarize the podcast, but I most importantly, I challenge my newsletter readers like I'm challenging you today. And I give them a prompt and I give them step-by-step on how to take the challenge. So if you're actually multitasking while listening to this podcast, totally normal. That's what I do too. Go ahead, hit pause, go subscribe to the newsletter, which is down linked in the show notes of this episode. And then you can go and actually take this challenge and use it every single day. So anyways, here is your challenge for this week. I want you to pick one account, just one. You might have hundreds, but just pick one. And I want you to ask yourself 3 simple questions, okay? I want you on that one account, ask yourself, what is this customer's top business priority right now? Then question number 2 is, how is your product directly impacting that priority? And then question 3 is, where is there an opportunity to expand value? All right? And if you cannot answer any one of those questions, this is your starting point. You need to take every single one of your accounts and answer those 3 questions, because that is the gap between managing in a relationship and managing an account and owning and growing revenue. All right, we talked a lot today. There was so much in this episode, so let's bring it all together, right? I talked a lot about how customer success has completely changed for a lot of us, and you no longer are just managing relationships. You are expected to drive and protect revenue. And the harsh truth is that most customer success professionals, they were never actually trained on how to forecast renewals or forecast revenue. And that is exactly why I have a workshop for customer success leaders and senior customer success managers to actually level up and be able to forecast renewals and forecast upsells. If that is something that you want to take advantage of and you want to help your team actually forecast growth, then go ahead and check out my workshops at thecustomersuccesspro.com/team-event. But as I said, most teams are not actually trained on how to forecast growth and actually have commercial conversations. And that is why there's just such a massive opportunity right now, because people who learn these skills will stand out immediately, especially in the AI-driven world that we find ourselves. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I know I need to be more commercial, but I just don't know how. Well, that's why you listen to this podcast. That's why I'm your coach. And that's also exactly what we fix inside of RevUp Academy. All right. We teach you how to think like a revenue owner, how to lead value conversations, and how to confidently drive expansion and renewals. And if that's something you are ready for, make sure you check the link down in the show notes for RevUp Academy, or head over to thecustomersuccesspro.com/RevUp. And if this episode resonated with you and if you enjoyed it, can you pretty please just hit that subscribe button? Believe it or not, there are nearly 5,000 people that listen to this podcast every single month. Thank you so much for listening. But there's actually only 1,000 of you that are subscribed. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube, wherever you decide to tune into this podcast, because it makes a huge difference. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But also, if this podcast resonated with you and you really had an aha moment while listening to this episode, why don't you go ahead and share it with your customer success bestie? Because honestly, the more we share this narrative around customer success being a revenue driver, the easier our roles become in the future. So go ahead and share it with your network, because this shift in customer success, it's happening whether we like it or not and whether we're ready or not. And the question is, are you going to keep managing accounts and managing relationships, or are you going to start owning and growing revenue? All right, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope to catch you next week for the next episode of the Customer Success Pro. Thanks for tuning in to the Customer Success Pro podcast. I hope you picked up something valuable to take back to your team. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you took just 10 seconds to leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more CS pros like yourself discover the show. And creating new episodes takes a lot of work, so leaving a nice review keeps me motivated to keep creating. And don't forget to hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcast episodes. I drop a new episode every Wednesday packed with practical tips. And if you've got a topic you'd love for me to cover or want to be a guest on my show, send me a message. All the details are in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, if this episode helped you, share it with a fellow CSM or CS leader. Remember, sharing is caring. Cheers to your CS journey, and I'll catch you next week for our next episode.